Hello, my name is Tom Bailey. I'm here with my friend Paul Fox, and we present professional development for Pennsylvania educators. We have two courses. One is a PIL, or a course for school and system leaders, and the title of that is Pennsylvania Educators, Your Ethical Codes and School Law. And we have a second course, which is dealing with professional ethics, and that's an Act 48 course. Now, we are both retired educators, but we both stay active with the public schools. And for instance, I was a long-term sub in two local school districts here in Allegheny County in 23-24. And Paul is still active with his marching band as an assistant with the high school where he retired from. So in speaking to teachers and working with teachers, we understand the last several years have been very tough for public school educators for a variety of reasons. One is COVID, went to virtual learning. Now you're back in the classroom, but some of the students, I've heard the attention spans are diminished. I've heard the telephones are a real big issue, such that in Florida now they've made a state law where the teacher can shut down the phones in their classroom. We've also heard that the funding by the schools is still an issue, and that led up to the William Penn versus PDE Commonwealth Court case. So we also know that these professional ethics requirements are going to start for the active educators in 23-24 school year. And in 24-25, the induction programs are going to have to incorporate professional ethics, as are the college education majors are going to have to take up professional ethics. So we are putting on these live events to discuss some of the topics that come up in professional ethics, and also the William Penn court case. And we do it once a week so that we can get the information out there, because we know educators are going to have this material eventually. So let me show you what the series is that we've created for this question and answer series. Now, we started these several weeks ago, and the first one we did was on the William Penn court case. If you've not heard, 6 school districts here in Pennsylvania filed a lawsuit with the several parents, the NAACP, and the Pennsylvania Association of Small and Rural Schools. And they claim that the General Assembly was not funding the public schools in an equitable manner. Now, in February of this year, Judge Jubileer came back and agreed with the plaintiffs and has found the General Assembly, that's the Senate and the House here in Pennsylvania, to have violated the Pennsylvania Constitution. Now, that is subject to appeal. And so what I've been doing is updating people on what's going on with that court case and getting discussion. What do you think about this? The result, and it may, if it's appealed, it could be subject to being changed. So that was our first session. But these next 4 are the actual components that PDE is going to require in the professional ethics course. They're going to require educators to look at the model code of ethics for educators. Excuse me. They're also going to ask that you look at the PA code of professional practice and conduct. Now, that is the state law as to what educators can and cannot do. If you've not heard of it, I would urge you to find out as much as you can about it, because you're subject to it for your certification. Today, we're going to look at the PA Professional Standards and Practices Commission. And this is the organization that actually hears complaints against Pennsylvania educators and determines whether or not they have could be sanctioned for their actions. And then next week is the Educator Discipline Act. That's the statute that we must comply with. And then starting July 3rd, it looks like I'll repeat the entire cycle. We'll do it once a week. So let's get started. Our agenda for today is we're going to look at the background of the commission, some history. Then we're going to look at 2 very important topics, local discipline as it applies to a Pennsylvania educator, but also state discipline. Then we're going to read the Educator Educator Misconduct Act in relevant sections that apply to the commission. Our last item is we're going to look at some resources. The commission has a tremendous number of resources available for educators to help do our jobs, and I'd like you to see some of those. And then we'll finish with questions or comments you may have about this topic. So historically, the General Assembly created the current commission in the 1970s. And they did it by a law that was called the Teacher Certification Act. In the 1970s, the commission was assigned to largely just deal with certification. They would recommend to the PA State Board of Education what types of classes should have a certified teacher. They would say what you needed a young teacher would need to take in order to become certified. And then they reviewed if there was issues with maintaining that certificate. So that was in the 70s how it got started. So in the 1970s, there were the two different types of discipline that can be confusing for people. The first is this local discipline, in that a possible sanction is that you could have your contract terminated with your LEA, your local education agency. And if you've ever heard of a Loudermill hearing, this is where the Loudermill hearing comes into play, in that the school district has to tell you what you're charged with. If you elect to have it, you could have a hearing in front of the board of directors of that LEA. The LEA would be able to present evidence against you. You would be able to present your own evidence, and then the board would have the option to issue a decision, which could be to terminate your teaching contract. And then you would have a possible appeal from the LEA to the Secretary of PDE, and he or she would have reviewed to see if they thought the LEA was appropriate in its termination. But there's another whole avenue of discipline, again from the 1970s. In state discipline, the possibility is that you could lose your certification, your license to teach. That would come about if an educator misconduct complaint was filed, and it would be filed with PDE. Specifically, it would be filed with the Office of Chief Counsel. And these attorneys would then investigate to look into the complaint. They would find out if they think there's merit to the complaint. And if they thought they wanted to pursue it, they would file a notice of charges with the Secretary of PDE, and he or she would have then heard the complaint, and that one person would have decided if a sanction was necessary. What happened, though, was in Harrisburg, the state government polices many professions. They police the attorneys, they police doctors. And in 1992, a doctor was being disciplined by the Pennsylvania State Board of Medicine. And he said, you know what? I don't think I'm being treated fairly, because one part of the State Board of Medicine investigated me and filed these charges against me. But another part of the state board then heard the case. And they said the argument was that the functions of the state board were commingled, prosecution and adjudication. And the argument was that's not fair. There should be two separate bodies that handle that. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court in 1992 agreed with that. And so this case, Linus versus State Board of Education, ruled that the State Board of Medicine had to change its structure. Well, in 1993, the General Assembly agreed and changed how the Pennsylvania Department of Education heard and determined allegations of educator misconduct. Now, the local discipline stayed the same, all these steps. But in state discipline, as I had mentioned, the PDE Office of Chief Counsel, they did the investigation, just like the complaint was for the State Board of Medicine. But now, if the Office of Chief Counsel thinks there is merit to the complaint, They will file the notice, but the notice goes to the commission. And the commission will hear the complaint and they decide now if a sanction is necessary. And for reasons we're going to go about shortly, I think you'll see it's a much more fair process the way it is now. So let's look at the Educator Discipline Act and how it sets forth the rules for the commission. So this is the Educator Discipline Act. You can access this actually to the General Assembly. If you ever want to see it, I try to give you suggestions how you can get there. But it is an excellent way to find out the rules for discipline. First section is all definitions. Here we are in section 1B. We're going to go through 1B and get to the section on certification. Okay, so for certification, it clearly states that no educator shall be employed by a school entity in the Commonwealth unless he has met the certification requirements, which are applicable to the position in the institution in which he is employed as established by the state board of private academic schools, or the department. So certification is controlled by the state board. I wanted you to see that. But it's the commission then that advises the state board what they should do going forward. Section 3, Professional Standards and Practices Commission. Who are these people? Well, I want you to see that there's hereby created a Professional Standards and Practices Commission consisting of 13 members appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the majority of the members elected to the Senate. So instead of one person, like the Secretary of PDE, there's 13. So let's see who these people are. The membership of the Professional Standards and Practices Commission shall consist of 6 classroom teachers, broadly representative of the education profession, with not more than 1 from a school entity other than a public school. 3 administrators from a school entity, at least one of them whom shall be a commissioned officer, and 1 a principal, with not more than 1 from a school entity. So within the administrators that are required, there's a mixture, and one of them has to be a principal, which I think is good also. Now, you also have an administrator from an approved institution of higher learning in the Commonwealth, which is offering approved teacher education programs, 2 members of the public, and one of them must be a public school director, so someone from the school board, and then at least 1 educational specialist. I think this is great in that it allows people from all different aspects of the profession to take part. Section C, what about their experience? All members of the commission, except the persons representing the general public, shall have been actively engaged in teaching or providing related educational, administrative, or supervisory services in a school entity or approved institution of higher education with approved teacher education programs for at least 5 of the 8 years immediately preceding their appointment. Now, the way I read that, an educator could have been an active classroom teacher, retired for 3 years, and then been appointed, and they would still satisfy that. So it's not the requirement that they have to have been actively teaching at the time, but fairly recently. And I think that is also an ideal way to set it up. So the powers and duties of the commission. First, it's no surprise to recommend to the state board rules and regulations defining positions for which certification should be required and criteria to determine qualifications consistent with this act necessary to hold the certificate. So they're still dealing with certification. The commission shall assess the effectiveness of educator preparation programs and recommend changes to the state board as indicated by such evaluations. So they're still overseeing education preparation programs or colleges and universities. And to establish procedures for the commission's adjudication of educator misconduct and applications for reinstatement, and for conducting public hearings, including the imposition of fines and fees. So this piece that they just had since 1993, their statute was amended to include that. One last section I'd like you to see for a person who's the most important person in the commission that no one knows about. I'm speaking about the executive director. The reference is to commission staff. There should be an executive director of the commission who shall serve as the executive officer and secretary of the commission. So the man's current name is Shane Crosby. Shane Crosby, I don't think has ever been a teacher. He is an attorney. So he acts to help the commission do its work. And if you ever go to one of their meetings in Harrisburg or across the state, you will see Shane Crosby sitting at the in the middle of the U, but he is really trying to facilitate the commission to do their work. So I think that's an excellent to have that person available, and he does give them legal advice. I think we're going to look at the actual, the website. Yep, website resources. I hope you can use these. Paul and I use them a lot. I hope you can find them able to help you out as well. This is the commission's website. Our current PD acting secretary, and then this is the person that is acting as the chairperson for the commission. And I will tell you a Myron Yoder story once we get into the more detail. So this is the website. I would like to show you 4 parts of this website that you could access to learn more about the commission. It all starts with the about. Under this about link, a lot of information here concerning the commission, but I always feel it's important to know who these government officials are. So here's a listing of the actual government officials that are on the commission. And there he is, Myron Yoder. I do not know the man. I'm not trying to act like I'm his best friend, but I have been to see 3 different commission meetings. And Myron Yoder, this is now in 2019. Myron Yoder is a retired teacher, but at that time he was still involved with the school district. He was driving buses for the Allentown School District. And we all know the bus drivers have a lot of effect on our kids because I see them coming in and going out if they're bus students. But during the meeting, the Office of Chief Counsel, and they do, the ones I've seen, 30, 40, 50 different cases, and they will review the facts, and they will say what is the likely disposition of the case where these people have had educator misconduct complaints filed against them. And this attorney was going through the facts as one case, and this is what happened. The attorney said that an educator was at her own home and that she had put her child to sleep and then left the home to go a couple of doors down to another neighbor's home while the kid was asleep. Evidently, what happened was the kid woke up, the kid left the house, and when the door shut, it locked behind him. He got scared. He started wailing and crying. Other neighbors had to help. to get him back in the house. They looked, they found the teacher, and an educator misconduct complaint was filed against this teacher. And the attorney started to go on, and Myron Yoder said, wait a minute. He said, you're telling me that this teacher has had an educator misconduct complaint that you may pursue because of what happened with her child one night? He said, I'll tell you right now, my wife and I raised several kids, and it wasn't always pretty. And if you're going to tell me that we're going to question her teaching based upon what happened one night, he said, I want to hear more about this case. The attorney went on. I got to speak at public comment at the end of the meeting, and I said, Mr. Yoder, I think that's what teachers should do. You've been in the classroom, you've been through that scrutiny, and you're asking the Office of Chief Counsel to have a little bit more about her teaching, let alone her private life. So I want you to know these educators are listening. I believe most of them take the position very seriously. And this is one instance where an educator stood up for another educator. Who else is on there? The Secretary of Education is to be an unofficial member. I've been to 3 meetings. I've never seen the Secretary of Education there. But here are the educators. Here's the educational specialist that fulfilling the statute. Phyllis Comer is from Western Pennsylvania. I've met her. Eugene D'Angelo, also from Western PA. Mr. Davis, here's one of the public members. Here's one of the administrators. Now, Dr. Hill is the person that's from a school, a university that has education preparation programs. So she is the fulfilling that role. Here's another administrator, another teacher, and another administrator. 13 members, all dealing with education to some degree, except for the public members. I think it's an ideal setup to review allegations of professional misconduct. Now, across the top, these menu bars are full of information that I would recommend you go to learn about professional ethics. And in this first one, the discipline system and reporting, I would definitely start with the overview of the discipline system. If you click on this, what comes up, and it's in sequential order, is a review, and it starts with filing of the complaint. If there's an educator misconduct complaint filed, here's the link to get to the complaint if somebody needs that. But I want you to see that once the Office of Chief Counsel gets the complaint, they go through it and they try to sift through to make sure there's merit to the complaint. Here, there's initial review to see if the allegations actually fit, if there's facts that fit the allegations. If they meet that burden, then they go to probable cause review. Excuse me, if you've heard of probable cause, often in a criminal context. And if you've also heard of a preliminary hearing at a district magistrate's office, that's the first level hearing to see if this case should continue to go to common pleas court here in Pennsylvania. Probable cause would mean that if you're charged with burglary, say I was charged with burglary, there's 2 elements in burglary. You have to show that there is a breaking into a building, and that the person had the intent to commit a crime inside. So if I have a preliminary hearing and they show that I broke into a building, but the evidence then shows that I went to sleep, likely the magistrate's going to say, well, you didn't fulfill the probable cause because there's no evidence on both elements of burglary. And if the Office of Chief Counsel finds that, they can dismiss at that point this educator misconduct. But if probable cause is found, the Office of Chief Counsel will require a full investigation. On this point, I've talked to a school solicitor that they said that one time they got a notice for a full investigation. PDE said, we want to know everything you know about this case, what happened. And they had 2 of those. One of them, PDE came within 30 days and picked up all the evidence. The other one, PDE never even came back. But if they do the full investigation and they find out it's necessary to go to a full hearing, please look here. That's when the notice of charges are filed. And then the case leaves the Office of Chief Counsel and formally goes into the commission. And then the clock starts ticking. If there are no notice of charges filed, the educator has 30 days in order to respond. They could request a hearing, which means they want to go through and contest it, or they can say, well, we don't contest it, and it's essentially a plea deal. So what goes on at the hearing? Well, first, there's the option for the LEA to be involved at the commission, but in a limited manner, and that's called intervention. They are able to be at the hearing. I do not believe they're able to call their own witnesses, but because they likely had a prior disposition of the discipline at their level, they are able to be present. Everyone should know that hearings before the commission are not jury trials. There's no judge there. The designation for the person that shows up is called a hearing officer. And the hearing officer presides, similar to a judge, but they are not a judge. There's no jury. In fact, in the commission, because they're often dealing with students and teachers, it's confidential information. The public is not allowed into the commission proceedings. It's just the parties and their witnesses. The hearing officer hears the evidence from the Office of Chief Counsel, and the educator can present evidence. The hearing officer then makes a proposed report to the commission, and if either the Office of Chief Counsel or the educator does not like those proposals, they can appeal to the commission, but the commission always has the final say. And last step, if you do not agree with the commission's decision, you could appeal it to the Commonwealth Court. And the Commonwealth Court would review what the commission has done. They could agree with part of it, or they could completely throw it out. Okay. 2 more sections. Statutes, regulations, and forms. This is a great place for you to actually read the law that affects your license. You could read the Code of Professional Practice and Conduct. Literally, if you're interested in it, just come back to when we do it again, or look at the video. You can read this. Here's the educator discipline. The link directly to it. And if you've not heard of the Model Code of Ethics for Educators, you will, because you're going to have to take the professional ethics class, and part of that is a discussion and use of the Model Code of Ethics. I need to go back 1 second, back to the discipline system. I think this is very important. If you are charged and found guilty, or found liable of a violation, it becomes a matter of public record. And by that, I mean, it is posted on the commission website, your name, the year the case was decided, and what you were found to be liable for. So please look at some of our fellow educators that have been found liable, and you can also see in most cases the sanction that was imposed.
When they say immediate suspension, does that mean doesn't mean expulsion or surrendering their license?
No, it's my understanding that the license is just inactive. Such as you said that here's an immediate suspension in March. You look down here, you'll see a person was reinstated. Reinstatement means you get back your certificate. You see this person, David Waring, immediate suspension in February, and in March it was reinstated. So he was evidently able to go back in the classroom in March of this year. Revocation is the termination of the license. So we've spoken to many educators about this, and some say this shouldn't be public record, and other people say, yeah, if you're found to have violated the laws, then you should be able to, people should be able to see it. And you can click on any of these, and all the paperwork comes up. Here's the actual order that affected this person, and you can read the whole thing. Okay. Last one. ethical practices. Paul, you recognize this used to be, the whole thing used to be the toolkit, but now it's much different.
Yeah.
Now, Act 126 was a mandatory reporting, and they reference it here. That's the one that Jerry Sandusky with the sexual assaults as he was an assistant football coach, but it is not an ethics class. It's mandatory reporting. But I would urge anybody, if you're interested in finding out more how to apply these rules and laws, look at this section on the commission publications. First off, one of their offerings is a fact sheet, just about what the commission does. And this is essentially a frequently asked questions. Look at the variety of questions and their responses directly from the commission, the experts in this field, that may answer some of the questions you would have. But two other ones, we talked to many educators, and there's dealing with the mandatory reporting. People often say, well, how do I know? How do I recognize or report sexual misconduct? Here's a document completely on that, printed by the commission. Other people don't want to report on a fellow educator. Why, when, and how do I report educator misconduct? It's all free, it's all accessible. I'm not saying it would be your entire research, but you can at least get started here, and it will help you to understand where to go from there. Obviously, you can always seek legal counsel. So that was a lot in a short time. We would be open to take questions. We'd like to hear from educators, and this is the time we would do it. To discuss these things, because as Paul and I both know, ethics is rarely cut and dried, and there's many ways of seeing the same issue, but those are some of the things that the commission deals with. Anything from you, Paul?
Yeah, I have a couple advertising slides here. Give me a second.
Okay.
I'd like to share that we have one more week of this initial 5-part series about educator ethics updates. And you should stay tuned. If you miss this next one, next Tuesday, June 27th, there will be more coming up. But next week is session 5, and Tom did cover a little bit of the Educator Discipline Act, but there's a lot more there because it's actually a very big document. It's the largest document I've ever read. And that will be June 27th at 4:30 p.m. And again, we would welcome you to attend or to just sit and listen or to ask questions. In addition, we do have a flyer or a trifold about our 2 PIL offerings. One is for credit and one is a non-credit course for school system leaders and CTC administrators. We provide a 25-hour PIL ethics continuing education course that really dives deeply into this, and you will get credit. And then we were also looking at a hybrid program where if you could not, for example, do the full 25 hours, we can give you a little portion of what we teach in a 4-hour webcast with a site license that you do that on your own. And then you would come back to us in a webinar, either Zoom or in person, for 3-hour facilitated discussion on ethical case studies. We feel very strongly that you need to sit in a group, PLC, if you will, or a committee, and wrestle with some of the ethical issues or conundrums, things that come up in the classroom or in the school system. And that's the best way to learn these topics, learn the practical application of the law and the ethics. So we hope that you'll pass this on. Thomas is going to put this flyer on his website, and that's his website. You need to go to his website for a lot of goodies, www.twbaileylaw.com. And the final, went the wrong way here. The final thing I wanted you to notice is we've actually scheduled another PIL course, approved 25-hour non-PDE Act 45 course. It's our 3rd series of synchronous classes. And we'll start on September 19th. So we hope that if you're interested, go to his website and there's a place that you can register. And you can also contact Thomas for any questions whatsoever that you might have about this. So that's my advertisement. We hope that you're interested in educator ethics. And even if you aren't, you will have to be well informed about ethics in the state of Pennsylvania, since it's now a requirement and will be in the next several years taught in induction programs, college prep, and in continuing education professional development workshops.
Okay,
Good luck, everybody.
thank you.